We don't have to worry about that.
6:30 p.m. Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. The Planning Commission is now in order. Call the roll.
Councilor McCarty?
Here.
Commissioner Natalie Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Malachi?
Here.
Commissioner Poole?
Here.
Commissioner Wentz?
Here.
Commissioner Pat Smith?
Here.
Chair Rowlett?
Here. Let's salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Planning Commission meeting minutes.
So I do have a couple items on the consent agenda. The first one is on page 1-3, and it's a minor thing, but about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sentences down, right in the center, the retraining walls should actually be retaining walls.
Good catch.
Yeah, it is a good catch.
On page 1-5, middle of the page where it talks about what I asked for, I do want to make sure we clarify there that I had stated that the public was speaking on his behalf about what he wanted, and I asked him to clarify what it was he actually wanted.
Okay, I'll follow up on that.
I want to make a comment on the minutes in general. That I know there's some discussion about this, but they're really, better by night and day of what they had been previously. So thank you.
Not me. Jill Tate has been doing our minutes. She's been transcribing for us, so I will pass that along to her, and she'll hear you.
And I want to thank, staff in general, Clay, and everybody that put all the work into it. You did a great job. Thank you.
June 27.
Yeah, one more thing.
July or something?
Let's see, work session, transportation. That's been moved to June. What about that, Malachi?
No, I did bring that up. That was the meeting we had with
Okay, that's what I thought you were referring it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
And you mentioned that we'd moved it, right?
Yeah, so during the meeting, it was on our agenda for that night,
Right.
but it actually had gotten moved to our next meeting, which was last month.
Right.
Right.
That's the May minutes, but that's
Okay.
Right, that's a reference. I just want to
All
make
right.
sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Russ. Anybody else? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the June 20 minutes as amended.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Okay, so,
Consent agenda passes.
sorry?
Consent agenda passes.
Consent agenda passes and is accepted. Thank you. Tonight, in our regular agenda, we're going to have 2 items. Public hearing Z0315-17-D, Autotown, and Z0271-17-C/PDR for the Verizon cell tower.
Chair, can I make a couple comments regarding both items at once?
Yes.
So first, I would like to say to both applicants, I really appreciate how complete these applications were. It really helps us a lot when there's that much detail. Makes our job a lot easier to go through. And for staff, Clay had mentioned that there was no response from staff on either agenda item, and that's something we've brought up before. Even if they don't have something to say, we would prefer to know that they've at least looked at it. So I think that's something we need to bring up again.
And just as a brief response to that, I did get comments from Jim Wynot today in the form of an email on the first item, the Buick Autotown.
Before we open the public hearing for Autotown, is there anybody in the audience that wants to testify besides the applicant in opposition or favor of the application, Bill? No. All right. So we're going to open the public hearing on Z0315-17-D Autotown Gladstone renovation at Mr.
Chairman, do we need to disclose anything prior to starting?
Yeah, I'll start all that.
Okay.
Or I'll read it all. I want to open the public hearing for the thing.
Okay, I'm sorry
That's
to
okay.
interrupt it. I just want to get away.
And I appreciate that because I am prone to miss stuff. 19495 Southeast McLaughlin, west side of McLaughlin at Gloucester. The public hearing is now open. The procedure we would like to follow tonight is Planning Department report, applicant testimony, proponent testimony, opponent testimony, applicant rebuttal, decision to continue or close the hearing, Planning Commission discussion and decision. Does any member wish to disqualify himself or herself for any personal or financial interest in this matter before us tonight, or does any commission member wish to report any significant ex parte or pre-hearing contacts? Please indicate if you had visited the site in connection with this application, and let's just start at the end and just work our way down the row. So just say your name for the record.
Commissioner McCarty. I visited the site a couple of times, did not go inside any of the buildings, and I did have extensive conversation with Jim Wynot prior to your conversation with him.
And just so the commission knows, conversations with staff or with me prior to a hearing are not ex parte contacts by statute. So.
Yeah, you can always talk with us.
Commissioner Smith, yes, I have reviewed the site.
Malachi, I have visited the site as a customer in the past multiple times, but never, not as part of the application.
Randy Roulette, I drive by there every day, and I made a special trip and stopped and drove around the block, and I didn't get out of the car.
Commissioner Poole, I did stop and walk the lot and walk the property just briefly. And unfortunately, I can't afford to buy a new car.
They have used cars, too.
Commissioner Wentz, and I have nothing to disclose. I'm familiar with it, but did not go over in regards to this.
Commissioner Pat Smith, I did visit both sites today.
Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the right of any commissioner, any commission member to hear this matter? Does any member of the, I already read that. Is there any member who wishes to question the jurisdiction of this body to act on behalf of the City Council on this matter? Oregon land use laws require that all issues be raised if the issues are to be appealed. Failure to raise the issues at this hearing may invalidate their further appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA. Any party has a right to request a continuance to this hearing, or in the alternative, to have the record left open for 7 days. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Commission to respond to the issue will preclude any action for damages in circuit court. If you're going to testify, please try to address the applicable criteria. Will staff please present the report?
Okay, thank you. This is a relatively straightforward proposal, and the applicant has a what I'm hoping is a really nifty slideshow to go through some site plan information for you, building elevations, that kind of thing. So I'm going to be brief. I think we all know where this is. It's Gloucester and McLaughlin. They're in the northwest corner. It's been a car sales lot for as long as I can remember. It's just been there in one form or another. And it's in a C3 zone, general commercial. The use is allowed outright. This is before you this evening as a design review application because their proposal rises to the level of a major modification of what's there. So that's why you're looking at it. In the staff report, which you all got a copy of, I went through what I think are the applicable criteria, as I usually do. Being along McLaughlin and in this particular location of McLaughlin, it's auto road. There's car sales lots everywhere, mixed in with other smaller commercial activities. As I mentioned, it's C3. I go through the ordinance criteria that apply. And I did have a question on this one that I wanted to ask the applicant. If you give me just a second, I'm going to get through here.
You did clarify one thing that they had put on the application.
I did?
Yeah, about the garbage disposal.
That, right, there's that. And also I think the Planning Commission may want to talk with the applicant maybe in a little detail about the materials proposed for the facade, because typically, your code specifically says, metal siding disallowed, or, unless it's high image, or I can't remember the exact wording, but I think the applicant can respond successfully to that. And that was really the only issue I had. Again, this is something that's been there for a very long time. They're simply changing it up, cleaning up a little bit. I did get some comments late in the day from Mr. Wynot, if you give me just a second, because I literally just got these probably an hour ago. Good afternoon, Clay. After being asked a few questions by Commissioner McCarty about catch basins, I had a concern regarding the conclusions for this project, specifically on the storm drainage requirements. Conclusion number 8, it states the existing storm drainage system is consistent with the standards of this chapter. Paragraph, it appears from the plans that they are disturbing over 5,000 square feet of impervious area per the Gladstone Municipal Code. If they are disturbing 5,000 square feet or more, they need to comply with the current Gladstone stormwater treatment and detention standards. And I would agree with that, and I would suggest, if approved, that should be added as a condition, that they, if more than 5,000 square feet, that they comply with that code section. Also, we received comments from ODOT. The applicant had been directed to contact ODOT. ODOT responded with, ODOT is supportive of the applicant's on-site improvements to further define the highway driveway and turning radius, and recommended local conditions of approval for curb, sidewalk, and an ODOT miscellaneous permit. That's actually done through ODOT, but I would suggest adding that as an informational condition also, that they satisfy these specific comments from ODOT. I've got a general condition in there, but maybe we can jazz it up a little bit. And otherwise, that's it, unless you have any questions.
On recommendation number 1, we'd also like to add the before expiration clause. And after this meeting, can you discuss with me where we are on that, since Eric's no longer with us?
Mm-hmm.
Questions from the commission?
Dig into the presentation first.
No, not yet. Do you have any questions for Clay? And then we'll have them present.
For Clay.
Anybody? Any more questions about the report? Okay. Is the applicant or is the representative present? You wish to add anything to the staff report? Which would be your presentation. Will you please give your name and address for the record?
My name is Steve McGuire, Access Design Group. My address is 12155 Southeast 106th Avenue in Happy Valley. Thanks, Clay. So as Clay mentioned, the project is relatively straightforward. It is an existing auto dealership and has been for quite some time. The project currently consists of effectively two buildings. One is the showroom space, and the other is a metal building that was added sometime later that serves as the service department. And then there is a smaller third building on the, you can see on the north portion of the site, that serves as an additional kind of shop space. So this application proposes the demolition of the showroom area in a first phase of the project, along with sort of the sidewalk and landscaping infrastructure around that area, and then replacement with a new showroom building, and again, new landscaping and new sidewalk. And then as a part of that, we would also be improving the vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site, which at current time leaves a lot to be desired, and we're hoping we can make it considerably easier to navigate. And then in the second phase, we would be looking at a new shop building on that north parcel. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, thanks. So you can see here the new building area sort of to the east of the existing service department that serves as the showroom and offices. It would also have a small second floor above it, so increasing the overall square footage slightly, but the footprint of the building actually gets a little bit smaller than the current shape. And then in addition to that, we would create a new vehicular service vestibule, if you will, to the south of the service department, and that would allow vehicles to pull into a enclosed area for a delivery to have your service done on your vehicle. And then, as I mentioned, improving the sidewalk area around the outside of the building, adding additional landscaping. One thing that the site is currently deficient on is landscaping. It does not meet current code. But the proposal here, according to the Gladstone Municipal Code, we would be increasing the amount of landscaping by approximately 3%, I believe, which is what is required based upon the amount of square footage that we're adding. And then, as I mentioned, on the north side, we would be doing a new service building in a later phase of the project. Now, that would be done under a separate permit, and the landscaping in that area would also be done at that time. So a portion of the landscaping requirement would be done not as part of this permit, but would then be done later on as a second permit with that service building. We could skip the next one and probably go. So this is go back one. Yeah, sure. This is what the existing building looks like. As you all have mentioned, you're familiar with it. The service building is, or the demolition part is shown dashed, and the existing service building, which will remain, is shown in solid line. And then you can go to the next one. And so this is the proposed showroom building, as well as the addition on front of the service building. As you can see, it's the majority of the facade is glass, so lots of natural light being brought into the showroom, and the rest of the finished system there, especially on the frontage, is a high-quality aluminum composite panel, and that is in black and white. And I actually have samples here. Let me grab it really quick. So we can certainly bring it up. Yeah. So the main facade of the building is the black and white panels that you see above the windows there, and then on the front, to highlight the entrance, there is an entry element, and that's made up of the black panels along with the polished aluminum and the burnt brushed aluminum that you see. And the black and white then panels will go around the side of the building and highlight what effectively is the showroom area. And then again, the white panels appear on the service entry vestibule area, kind of tying the development together. The rest of the building, including the existing service building, would be painted white in color. So again, kind of helping to create a cohesive design for the overall project. And then I think go to the next one. And then this would represent the next phase of the development under separate permit. We would be constructing an additional shop building, and that would be, again, a metal building on the north portion of the site, in a slightly different location than where it currently exists. It's actually more tucked into the site. And again, that would be painted the same, probably the same white color that the main showroom building would be painted. That's effectively what we have to present today. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So is the general idea to move the sales team from the showroom floor up to the top layer?
So on the second floor would be mostly offices, administrative, that sort of thing, and then some storage space, general manager, that sort of thing. And that allows them, currently they don't have a lot of room in their existing showroom. So by doing that, we get some more space available to display some cars inside the building, and generally just have a little bit larger sales floor.
So for the second story, what are we going to be seeing through those windows from the outside?
It's effectively office space. Yeah. And most of that facade, especially on the south side, is actually, that facade of the second floor is set back from the edge of the building, about 20 feet or so. On the north side, that's not the case. It's flush, but that's interior of the lot, so it's not really adjacent to the right-of-way.
Any kind of storage, like you mentioned, would be away from the windows, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I have a question. It's mentioned in here about the landscape redesign.
Mm-hmm.
And then also in your report that you did, which is very, very nice.
Oh, thanks.
Love that. It mentioned that part of the sidewalk and landscaping is on public right-of-way. And I guess my question is, they tend to park cars there for sale on the grass and the sidewalk, and I'm not sure that that's legal to do that. David?
Parking the cars on the...
They park the cars, it would be in the right-of-way, but they park cars for sale on the landscape, the grass area.
I think the code prohibits that, that's correct.
And then I noticed that Clay actually did put a condition that really relates to that question. I guess, really, let me start over. My question is, do you know that they display cars for sale?
I mean, we're not involved in the day-to-day operations with how they do that, so all I can do is look at the code as it's presented and put together a set of drawings that basically responds to that, and that's what we've proposed today.
Okay, at this point, then that's all I have to say about that.
Regarding the driving, so I agree with you. The current ability to drive around the parking lot is pretty prohibitive. Do you know how much that's going to be relieved by these changes?
Yeah, I think some of that's reflected kind of just in the drawings themselves. As you can see on the site plans, the circulation system and the depth of the parking area. So if you could go back to like the very first one. The very first one, yeah. If you look at sort of like the parking area in front of the building there especially, which would be on the east side, the depth of those stalls is not, does not meet current code. Same thing on the south side there, and you can see even kind of the driveway access aisle there is really restricted, and the intent of our renovation on the site would make those stalls appropriately sized, but at the same time provide for driveway access that meets current code. So
I guess my concern would be less about how large the stall itself is and how wide the spaces are between it and the cars behind it compared to today.
Right. The space between them actually is a little bit less than what the current is, but the intent is by providing more better parking, if you will, there would be less cars kind of stacked in the empty spaces by restricting the driveway. So right now they have a lot of extra space in there, and so they're sort of filling them in, I think, with cars, and by giving them more delineated stalls for display and for parking, we would help to alleviate that. So.
Okay. And River Road. Is any of the parking changes expected to affect River Road parking?
No.
Okay.
You're referring to the on-street parking there? Yeah, no, we wouldn't.
Anybody questions?
You've got the, let me start off with this, and this is what I talked to Clay about, and just to be clear, you've referenced 17.56020 in the Gladstone Municipal Code, dealing with stormwater and retention.
Did you say that one again? I'm sorry.
17.56020. That's what's referenced in there, and it's also what Clay responded to in his notes, and he was starting to speak to tonight. You address all of the different aspects of it in your response to it.
Correct.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, so I'll try to do this as delicately as possible. But Ordinance 1419 of the Municipal Code was adopted 13 October 2009, and that addresses specifically the stormwater treatment and detention standards. And if you disturb or redevelop 5,000 square feet or more of impervious surface, which is what you are in fact doing, my best guess is that it's at least probably 5,000-6,000, maybe more feet where you're just putting the new shop in and so on. By doing that, according to the code, you trigger a different set of standards that have to be met now. The city of Gladstone, specifically Public Works, and I don't know if you're probably not aware of this, but they've gone through, and because of the sewage problems we have in the treatment, all of the citizens are paying a fee in addition for stormwater runoff that goes into the stormwater drain system, which ends up in the sewer. We have to treat it, and currently, under the fee schedule that you're under, it's a minimal amount. So I have two questions, or I have probably more than that, but we'll start with one. I wanted to know if your car wash facility is, because you've now done this, you now are responsible for bringing everything up to code. Okay? You've done enough that this causes that to trigger that. So I want to know specifically, are you recycling the water in the car wash, or is that going into the stormwater or sewer?
To be honest, I'm not sure how that system is working. Like I said, we believe there's an oil water separator on site, as typically is the case for service departments and car washes. So.
Where's the water separator? I saw the catch basins. I saw the two new ones, the Lynch basins, which are have an oil separator, but the others are just catch basins with cleanouts that I saw. I didn't see anything where it's collected. So if you have contaminants, whether it's soap or whether it's fuel, oil, doesn't make any difference. This new code, under the code, and if you look at 17.06, which is what you got, 17.56020 standards, Part E, it says, assure that the runoff drained from new development and redevelopment sites is managed in accordance with criteria outlined in the City of Gladstone stormwater treatment standards as to not cause erosion or in great extent to occur in the absence of development. But if you look at D, it says under maintenance, all surface drainage facilities, specifically stormwater treatment and detention systems, shall be maintained regularly in accordance with schedule, acceptable to the city and owner, to be defined during the project approval phase, which is what we're doing. And under that, it triggers also the next section, which is 2 under drainage submittal requirements, which requires calculations for all this drainage and how much of which kinds of fluids, whether it's off of the surface or whether it's out of those out of the car wash, that it needs to be calculated and it needs to be submitted to the city prior to us approving it. Is that correct, Clay? I can tell you that
when you get into the, well, let me back up a little bit. Gladstone's a little late to the party as far as surface water management and that kind of thing, but with the updated 17.56, okay, well, just the entire chapter, Gladstone is now compliant with state and any applicable federal regulations that would apply, but that would typically be added on as a condition and Jim Wynot has asked that be added on as a condition, if this is approved, that the development satisfy the requirements of that chapter.
Well,
And that would typically be the way to do it.
I understand, and here's what my concern is in the last couple of planning sessions we've had because of the wording of a lot of the Gladstone Municipal Code. My concern is that down the road, and it goes into somebody else's hands, and whether it gets enforced or followed or it's implemented or not is what I'm always concerned with. We're talking about, we're right at the Rainerson area there on the one side, which is where the stuff grades anyway. Not to say, but if those things got plugged up, even with the oil separators, they can overflow, and that all ends up going down into the protected areas. It can, not that it will. And it does take some unusual circumstances to make that happen. I'm simply asking that they comply with the calculations and give us a map of where this drainage is going to go, and where they're going, and where this water from the car wash is going, how it's treated, and the 2 new catch basins you're adding in. There's, I think I counted some like 7 catch basins around the existing property, but there's 2 additional new ones on the north side, and they tie in with a 10-inch PVC straight into the sewer system. Now that, I believe those 2 have a it's a steel drain. It's actually a catch basin. It doesn't meet the normal concrete standards that we do. It's a private company in Portland that makes these, and I haven't seen anything that says where that oil goes once it leaves there, and there's not a schedule that requires them to clean those out and to let the city know how that's all happening and how it's being disposed of. And that's what my concern is, that we not let this go forward until we get something that says that they've met all of that. And my concern is simply the runoff and the contaminants that are possible to happen.
Yeah, this is a cart and a horse question, and I would put it in the same category as building permits. Now, they're going to be required to get building permits also. We're not going to require them to get the building permits before we approve the use. And I guess that's kind of the way I'm looking at this. And so is Jim Wynot from Public Works. This would be something that, well, I am not qualified to review stormwater reports, and I doubt anybody on this commission is. This is something for an engineer to look at.
Calls for an engineer to stamp it.
Right. But it requires an engineer to review it after it's been submitted by the private side engineer, and we don't have anybody on staff. But this is typically something that's conditioned.
That engineering review almost always happens at building permit review.
Right.
Where all those calcs are put through, and the condition as Clay said, at the time of use approval, denial, depending on how you go, would be that it's feasible for them to comply with this, and then you would condition it appropriately. That's how I've virtually always seen it done.
And I think we talked earlier about condition number 8 having to do with stormwater. Would that satisfy your question, do you think?
Well, not really, because as he said, he's not even sure where the water goes out of the car wash. I mean, those things are going into the system, and we're paying a fee. They pay a minimal fee, and Jim Wynot is actually in the process of setting up a new schedule. So when you have these large impervious areas, which theirs is basically 100%, I'd say 98% impervious area, that runoff that comes off of there goes somewhere, and any of it that goes into the sewer, we're paying to have that water conditioned.
Oh, Clay, you mentioned that you thought this would all be taken care of during the, Jim will be out there and so forth, correct? I mean, where do you see this, the concerns being addressed?
Well, this is a nuts and bolts condition, it's very typically a condition. You don't have to, again, I'll go back to the building permits. You're not going to require they get building permits before you approve the use. And their building may not be able to be permitted. We don't know that. That's for the plans examiners to make that call, much like it's for the engineers to check the private side engineers' calculations. It would be very unusual to require that ahead of time.
So, Dennis, let me ask you this. If we have a condition that they have to comply with that and they have to have the sign-off from Public Works before they do anything, what is the remaining concern?
If Jim signs off on it, I'm fine. What I'm concerned is it leaves us, and we have no more control over it, and we never see it again after that.
But would you if Jim is going through the effort of doing that review and signing off on it, is there something else you expect to need to review yourself?
No,
Okay.
either we get to see it or he gets to see it. Somebody needs to sign off on it that's after the drawings are, because these drawings that we're talking about are extremely extensive, and they do require an engineering, and the Clackamas County Service District requires it as well. So all I'm saying is, we have been dealing with properties, and when it leaves us, we have no more control over it. And I understand what he's saying. I mean, I understand it perfectly that, the cart and horse thing is understandable. But the problem is, we're talking about it's property and areas that we have to deal with and be accountable to the public over. And once it leaves, I'm sorry, I don't have a great deal of confidence that all the steps are going to be taken. And if Jim's going to be in the loop and he signs off, I'm good.
I think, that's great that you did point that out about the car wash. I didn't even think about that. So in your condition and our conditions that we'll add here, let's mention the car wash and other things that, or find the appropriate language for the concerns that we have, that they're all, check, because we can't engineer the whole project here.
If I may, there's any number of conditional type situations that are involved in a land use application, whether it be as I mentioned before, the size of parking stalls or drive aisles, etc. And all of that stuff is, it's presented today in theory, and it is measured in practice at the time of building permit. And as Clay has mentioned, there are any number of finite reviews that go through those types of things to make sure that the project is then compliant with all jurisdictional requirements. What we're talking about today is a broad scope, and not the details. While still respecting your concerns, there is a level of review that will guarantee that stuff. So
I just want to make sure that somebody at the city, Jim specifically, if that's who it is, sees that document and approves it from the city's perspective, because he's having to deal with all of the things that follow into these systems, and he's trying to clean it all up. He's trying to keep the cost down and be sure that people who are dumping things into those systems, there's a cost related to that, and we need to recover those costs if that's the way it is. I just want to make sure that it's very clear that if Jim says it's okay, I'm good with it. That's it.
Good. Anybody else have questions of the applicant? Okay. Thank you, sir. If there's anything else you want to add, go ahead.
Yeah. There is one condition that we would like to just briefly discuss, and that is, condition number 4, specifically final certificate of occupancy shall not be granted until all conditions of the design review approval have been met. As we've mentioned a couple times now, we're looking at this as a phased project with the stuff to happen on the north parcel to happen later. Part of that is just from an operations standpoint, because we're effectively removing 2/3 of the facilities that they have available to them. They need to be able to utilize that building on the north as part of their operations while we remove the showroom. And so the intent would be to obtain a building permit for the demolition and renovation and rebuilding of the showroom. And then once that work is done, and including the infrastructure, landscaping, sidewalks right around that area, once that is done, then in a future project they would obtain separate building permits to build out the north side of the site, which would include then the remainder of the additional landscaping and the new building up there.
Let me ask you a question. Why did you put them both into one application if you were planning on doing them at separate times?
Just a matter of convenience to handle it with one application dealing with the entire site, as opposed to having to have a separate process and separate hearing at a later date.
But it sounds like you want the occupancy for the two to be done separately.
Correct. We want to be able to finalize the permit on the first project, which would be the showroom, and allow them to then move into that site and get up and running again effectively before looking at permitting for the second part of the project.
Clay, do we have a means to separate the occupancy permits into two separate permits?
Yeah, and again, it's a phase project. That's not unusual either.
Okay.
There are times when we do a master plan like this and they end up having to come back later because they've changed their mind or something, but this has been presented as simply a two-phase project. Each of the buildings will require a separate final certificate of occupancy. Were there two buildings? There's three, right? Because you're going to redo the one or add the one.
Well, the showroom and the service department effectively are one building. When we're done, they're separated seismically, but they act as one building, and then the second building would be the building on the north part. So.
And your concern is that until you do the top section, you wouldn't have complied with all the requirements for the bottom one.
Correct, because it doesn't make, just from a feasibility standpoint, doesn't make sense to do all that landscaping up there than to just tear it out again in order to move, to tear down that building and build a new building, so.
Sure. That makes sense to me.
What's the, do you have a timeline on the project? You know, phase 1, phase 2, how long is it going to take from start to end?
I mean, I can give you an estimate of construction time for phase 1. What do you?
End of April, spring, to be up and running.
Yeah. So.
Starting when though?
Starting in October.
October through April.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just phase 1.
Yeah. So 5-6 months. And then we don't have an official start date for phase 2 yet. I think it's somewhat contingent upon how quickly things kind of get back to normal on the site.
So that's where my concern is that if the phase 2 doesn't start for some time, during that entire time you're non-compliant. So if we were to approve something like that, and Clay, you'll have to correct me if this is inappropriate, but I would want to see some time limit for that occupancy permit to be still valid, for them to actually get the rest of that stuff done. Does that make any sense? I mean, because what we're saying is they're not going to be in compliance.
Sure.
For an unknown amount of time.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking a certain amount of time?
I think we want to at least have some time limit that we're going to allow non-compliance.
Yeah, the code doesn't really necessarily address phase developments.
Yeah.
Some do. This one in particular doesn't. I believe the plan is within, like, say, 3 years or so for the phase 2 to be completed. So,
I guess one question is, what bearing does phase 2 have on any of the operational or occupancy issues of?
They're just not going to be in compliance with all the requirements for the phase 1 because of the landscaping.
The landscaping piece. Okay.
Right. We won't have fulfilled all of the required landscape additions without.
Well, from that standpoint, they're not going to be any less in compliance.
But it means that they could do phase 1 and then never get around to phase 2.
Possibly.
And we would have
What about
granted the occupancy without them being in compliance.
Possibly.
What about a bond or something like that for?
And this has come up before. Does the city have the ability to do that?
It does for certain it's not a public improvement. It does for public improvements.
I can do it through the county, but not in the city.
Let me take a look at the code.
I mean, all I want to do is ensure that the second phase happens.
Sure.
And in a timely fashion, because if it doesn't, then we spend all this time without the first section ever getting completed.
Right.
But you must have a project plan, right? I mean, you've got your project out on paper from start to finish. What would be so hard as to try to put some timelines on that?
Yeah, it hasn't, we've been focused on phase 1 of the project at this point, and phase 2 is just in the planning stages at this point, so.
Okay. So I can kind of see how that, kind of is an issue though, because you have one design review, but yet you have like 2 different things going on.
You could tie all the conditions to phase 1, to final certificate of occupancy for the phase 1 work. You could simply do that. But what you'd end up, it would just result in removal of that landscaping later than when you come back in for phase 2. But that would be the cleanest way to do it. Just tie it to the first phase. All the conditions.
So you're saying require the landscaping to be installed and then removed again?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's just one way to do it, but that would be, as far as as far as trying to protect the conditions, I think that's probably the cleanest way to do it. It's also rather silly, because you'd just be tearing that stuff out.
Yeah. And we're certainly open to the suggestion of a timeline. Like I said, unfortunately the code doesn't specifically dictate, how long you have to fulfill. There is a, you have to start work within 1 year, but it doesn't say that it must be completed within 5 years. And oftentimes we've seen municipal codes in the past that do that. They say, like you said, you have to start construction within 1 year, and everything must be fulfilled within 5 years or whatever the case might be. So.
Well, I know stuff takes different time, but I think at least we would know that Phase 2 had been started by a certain point of time, instead of just, I'll probably forget I even talked to you in a couple of months, or was even here.
So the code is not exactly super clear on the idea of an improvement guarantee for what amount to, improvements on private property. It's not like it's a street or a, sewer system, etc. That would be something that was done, installed pursuant to like a subdivision. That part is there, but it does speak to them, and I know Clay had mentioned that the county does them routinely for things like, landscaping.
For landscaping.
Yeah, I've seen that before too. So that may be, unless the applicant would have a serious objection to that, that may be another way to handle that. It's just that basically require what amounts to like a bond that would be, some amount of money that reasonably reflects the cost of those that landscaping. And then if there was a failure to do Phase 2, then the city would have that ability to say, okay, well, time to
Okay,
put
we
this
can
in.
talk about that later in the process when it comes to conditions.
Is that something you'd be open to?
I think that would, we've done projects in the past where that's been a requirement and have done so. I can't speak specifically for the owner, but I would assume they would be open to something like that. And to be frank, their intention is not to sit on this. They would like to say, well, within, as soon as we get done with Phase 1, we'll roll right into Phase 2. But
it doesn't always work out.
Exactly.
Do you actually have a schedule for the completion of the whole thing at this point?
Correct.
So what are you projecting it now?
Scheduled to start October, scheduled completion.
That's just Phase 1.
That's just Phase 1.
No, I'm saying for the whole project, do you have a schedule projected to where you might?
Again, as things progress, it's going to be kind of a moving period to get them comfortable back in their new building, so that they can confirm, that there's a break-in period.
Mhm.
Well, I'll rephrase it then. How long will it take to do the second portion? You guys should know that. You're designing it. Okay. Does that help? Okay.
Well, what's concerning to me is that you said something about being 3 years, that it could take 3 years to get it all done, and I'd have a problem with it being in transit and being constructed for 3 years. Because the landscaping isn't up to par right now. I still remember when the trees were there that got removed, I believe illegally anyway, but I don't think it was this company, it was the previous one. So it's looked pretty barren and bad. And then to throw on top of that 3 years of construction would just, I don't know, wouldn't look pretty.
Sure. Well, it wouldn't be actively in construction for 3 years, and the majority of the site that we'd be focusing on, the larger portion of it, and that landscaping would be completed. So the stuff that's on the south side there and around the building and the frontage areas and things like that, that landscaping would be completed. It would really just be kind of that on that north portion, kind of along the property line that you see at the very far north there. And that's kind of the only area that we're talking about. The rest of the stuff that's in and around the showroom building would be done as part of Phase 1.
Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't look like it was under construction for 3 years?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely don't want that. Then the owner doesn't want that either. They want customers to, that scares customers away.
Right.
Well, and you're going to improve the immediate need, and really to simplify it, you're going to take care of the house in the front yard, then you're going to do the backyard.
Exactly.
And as long as we don't wait forever as your neighbors for you to get your backyard done.
Right. And as I mentioned,
work.
the owner doesn't want that either. Their intent is to do it as soon as possible, but from an economic standpoint, and having this be a renovation where there's so many contingencies that you can't account for as you start to dig into something like this, it's hard for them to put a timeline on it and to see how quickly they recover from phase one, if you will. So.
Do you anticipate any traffic impediments due to construction on either Gloucester or River Road?
That's more of a feasibility question.
No.
I mean, there'd be trucks coming in and out that. We're not talking about any blockage or rerouting or anything like that.
Area out front that would be designated for drop-off, and
Yeah.
it would be all on site.
Yeah, this construction is extensive enough that it's going to disrupt kind of their normal day-to-day business in that area anyway. They won't be able to sell cars or display cars in that area, so there'll be room on the site for construction equipment, things like that. So.
Yeah, and that brings up the question I had, and that is, I spent many years in material handling, and we moved some businesses, and it gets really crazy. And so when you're trying to logistically make this happen, I know you're going to be aware of noise, light, all the things that the neighbors are, and the traffic issues. But right now, as it sits, that business is good, and that whole intersection at River and Gloucester and there at McLaughlin it's getting pretty packed up. It's good luck trying to turn around somewhere in that neighborhood. So I don't know. I mean, obviously you're improving your site, but when we start on this, if there's too much noise, if we start to create too much traffic problems, in the eyes of the public, we're going to hear about it, you're going to hear about it. So
Sure.
One of my concerns really is, how will the employees park? What's parking going to be like when we've got it all torn apart? Not once it's back together.
Say that I remodeled the Mazda and Toyota directly next door, so
Right.
I'm very familiar with the area and logistics of how to coordinate around the traffic in the area. And the owner has adjacent properties up McLaughlin. He has 2 different properties that he's planning to move partial operations to, and
Okay.
vehicle inventory to keep it off the lot, to keep congestion down as well.
Yeah, because you were getting down to where I was thinking, okay, how are you going to take care of the employees and your inventory? And that parking lot across the street of the donut shop's not big enough. So it sounds like you've thought it through, and I don't mean to belabor it, but we've had some real issues. You hear the stories where things drag out, or a project starts creating a lot of noise for the neighbors that drags on, and that's just a concern.
Is the service department going to remain open during the construction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to do any kind of construction after normal business hours? Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Well, actually, I have one more question about how it looks. So, to me, it looked like it's not going to, even with the second floor, it's not going to significantly change. Like, it's not going to become a big behemoth or anything like that.
No, I believe the building height's actually smaller than what it currently exists at.
But
so.
but height-wise, you said you're going up a little, which is fine, but it's not going to be it's not going to be significantly like something you look at and go, oh my gosh, that's huge, correct?
No, definitely not. And like I said, the second floor, especially on the south side and on the east side, kind of adjacent to the right-of-way, is actually set back from the front of the building. So the overall appearance of the building, it will be lower. I think there's actually a rendering. It's the JPEG file. Open that up and give you an idea from a 3D perspective of what it will look like, and I think you'll see it's actually not as imposing as it sounds when you say, oh, we're going to add a second floor. It's not right on the front there where it looks really tall on the street, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, thank you.
Dennis, well, I'm going to go back to where we were. Can we require them to have a bond for phase 2? How do we go about doing that?
I think the way we should handle that is on recommendation number 4. We do an allowance for landscape bonds. So we don't require it, but we allow for it. So if they have landscape done by then, fine, but if not, we put an allowance for a bond.
Yeah, I mean, I can live with bonding for the landscaping, but you can't require bonding for something that you can't require they build phase 2.
Oh, that's fine.
So you can't require they bond for the building, no. But for the required landscaping, if David's
And I would
okay with
actually prefer if we put it in there as, we allow that as part of that, number 4, rather than required, because,
I just wanted to make sure we got it on the record.
yeah, I don't want to make the assumption landscaping won't be done. I'd rather have a way for us to handle it if it's not.
Okay, while we're on this, because there's gonna be a bunch of other conditions, could you word that for me real quick?
Maybe like with allowance for a landscape bond, something like that?
Okay, certificate of occupancy shall not be granted on final phase building. I don't like that. I got going wrong. That isn't what you want.
No, that's,
What's that?
That isn't what you wanted, what I just said, so could you...
So
give it to
number
me?
4, I think you could put like a semicolon at the end and say with allowance for a landscape bond.
Just leave it as is and add
Yeah.
with allowance for...
Or something like that. I mean, David might have better wording for it, but...
And we'd also like to make sure that we remove the requirement, the line that says final occupancy.
So that's the one we were just discussing.
Yeah.
That's what you'd asked
So what
for,
we're
yeah.
saying is, leaving it like it is, but adding allowing for a landscape bond to complete that.
No, the way I had it was certificate of occupancy of final phase building shall not be granted until all conditions of design review approval have been met, and then I was gonna add language requiring bonding for...
Allowing for, and not requiring.
Well, what we're really saying is the condition to have all the landscaping done can be met by submitting a bond in lieu of doing all the landscaping.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but...
We're saying that part of the condition to get the final occupancy can be met through a bond.
By getting a bond. Okay.
correct.
Does that work?
Okay, how about just delete 4 as it is and instead put developer to bond for landscape, required landscape.
Well,
Is that too clean? Or
if
is that-
they-
I like David's wording better.
Yeah, I think
I know,
so.
but there was way too many.
We have a recording, right?
let me work on it. You guys
All right,
continue
okay.
it, and I'll make it. So
you know
it's
what we're
less
trying to
lawyerly.
do anyway.
Yeah, I do.
Just to be clear too, part of the increase in landscaping requirement is because that shop building there is actually doubling in size. So I don't know if we need to have some sort of contingency as well to say if phase 2 doesn't happen at all, would we need to then amend our land use application to reduce the amount of required landscaping?
Well, and that gets back to why I was asking why you were doing them both at once. If you had done them as 2 separate applications, then you would have had a smaller requirement.
Right.
Right.
Actually, I think we're still in the same bracket, if you will, that doesn't go down until you get less than that. So, because I think we did actually look at that as a possibility of a reason to separate them. So.
Well, I think the landscaping wasn't gonna be 100% compliant anyway, was it? I thought it was just an increase of 3% based on the city code of, you know,
Right.
not requiring that you be 100% compliant
Correct.
because of grandfathered. So I wouldn't really wanna go there if it was up to me, but.
You'll end up at 10% when basically you're
Right,
close
when
to
you
it.
do the second part, exactly, so.
So does any commission members have more questions for the applicant at this phase of our hearing? If not, now's the time for public testimony. Does any member of the public wish to testify in support or opposition of the application? Seeing none. Now's the time for applicant rebuttal. Do you want to rebut anything, sir? Before you get too far, if there's anything you want to add in rebuttal, or do you have any other comments? Anybody in the audience that wants to comment, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And seeing none, if there's no further testimony, I'll entertain a motion to continue or close the public hearing.
I will make a motion that we close the public hearing for file C0315-17-D.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? now we can discuss.
So you had a couple conditions at the bottom of yours. What were
Well,
those?
I was, in the conditions, the one that bothered me the most was which is already conditioned, is number 6 with the, parking on the landscaping and parking in the public right of way. I don't know really, it's already there, so I'm good with what's in the conditions so far. And then, there was a discussion about the stormwater. Dennis, did you wanna make a condition for the stormwater?
Well, I think, actually, it's not just the stormwater. I think that they need to meet all of the requirements of 17.56. The whole section.
Right, and I agree with that, and what my suggestion is to just, again, don't start adding things like the car wash, because you're gonna miss
Yeah.
stuff.
No, that's why
Okay.
I went with the generic, but also, in addition to that, I wanna make sure that nothing goes forward until Jim Wynot signs off on it.
Well, instead of Jim, why not say Public Works?
Public Works,
Well, what I've got so far is developer to comply with current Gladstone stormwater treatment and detention standards. Boom, period.
And will that require sign off from Public Works?
Yes,
Okay.
that's who implements that. Yeah, that's essentially the wording that Jim Wynot asked for, by the way, in this condition.
was what?
I got late comments from Jim Wynot
Right.
just this afternoon.
That was after I talked to him, yeah.
You're right, and that's the language out of that email that I got.
Yeah, it's the stormwater treatment and detention standards is what it is.
But can you
for
just
City
read
of
that back
Gladstone.
for Dennis?
What's that, sir?
He's gonna read back what.
I've got developer to comply with current Gladstone stormwater treatment and detention standards.
Is that okay with you?
I would refer to chapter 17.56 is all.
Well, that way you're not, though, limiting it to 17.56.
All right.
Yeah, this leaves it more open.
All right.
What was the other one?
I think that was it. We were gonna add a condition 9
Which
or
was about
something.
what?
I didn't write all my notes down, so now I can't remember.
No, I know we've mentioned the expiration clause.
That's on there.
Okay. And we've already addressed how we're gonna handle a bond issue.
David's gonna rework that.
Okay.
Yeah, Clay and I can come up with the specific language.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I think those are all the conditions.
Ready for a motion?
Yeah.
I will make a motion that we approve file Z0315-17-D with the conditions as specified.
I second that.
All right. Let's call a roll.
Commissioner McCarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Natalie Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Malachi,
Yes.
Commissioner Poole,
Yes.
Commissioner Wentz,
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
Yes.
Chair Rowlett.
Yes. All right, the application is approved.
I'd like to say thank you. Your documents were very complete and with a lot of good information in there. Appreciate your patience with us.
It'll be probably early next week. We'll have a written decision out, and it'll be mailed to all the usual suspects, including you folks. So.
All right. The next item on the agenda is public hearing Z0271-17-C/PDR, replace existing 80-foot wooden decommissioned wireless communication tower with new 50-foot steel tower to be used by Verizon Wireless along with associated ground equipment, Gladstone High School at football field track, west side of Portland Avenue, large map, plans attached separately. So, the public hearing is now open for said application. The procedure we'd like to follow tonight is Planning Department report, applicant testimony, proponent testimony, opponent testimony, applicant rebuttal, decision to continue or close the hearing, Planning Commission discussion decision. Does any commission member wish to disqualify himself or herself for any personal or financial interest in this matter before us tonight, or does any commission member wish to report any significant ex parte or pre-hearing contacts? Please indicate if you visited the site in connection with this application. Let's start at the end and just work our way down again.
Commissioner McCarty, I visited the site twice.
Commissioner Smith visited.
Malachi, I have visited. I would also like to mention that I was involved in the original application as well as in the code rewrite that happened.
Chair Roulette, no, I did not visit the site and I'm not aware of any specifics.
Commissioner Poole, I did visit the site and, like Malachi, was involved in the previous decisions.
Libby Wentz, I did not go by specifically for this, but I'm familiar with the grounds.
Commissioner Pat Smith and I did visit the site today.
Is there any member of the audience who wishes to question the jurisdiction of this body to act on behalf of the City Council in this matter? Oregon land use laws require that all issues be raised if the issues are to be appealed. The failure to raise the issues at this hearing may invalidate the further appeal of the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA. Any party has a right to request a continuance to this hearing, or in the alternative, have the record left open for 7 days. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Commission to respond to the issue will preclude an action for damages in circuit court. If you're going to testify, please try to address the applicable criteria. Will the staff please present the report?
Okay, hello Clay again. So this is your first opportunity to apply the rewritten 17.61, the wireless section of your code. Was that about a year ago? I'm just trying to, it seems time slips by. Right, and that happened, just subsequent to a previous application for a similar structure, but within the right-of-way. This time, if you go up the road a piece here, there's a large, it's called the Gladstone High School, and on the west side of the road is the sports field complex. In there, and there's a lot of verticality to that site with the scoreboard and with other poles, and there's a lot of up and down going on there. And if you look real close, you'll find an existing 80-foot tower that's just standing there kind of naked. That's a decommissioned wireless facility. This proposal involves taking that one out and replacing the same location with a 30-foot shorter, 50-foot tall steel tower. It's through Verizon. There's also going to be the typical ground-mounted equipment area, fenced in and the like. Zone designation is R72. And I got to tell you, just off topic for a minute, we've had a couple of retirements at the county, and frankly, we are just slammed, and I'm overwhelmed. And I notice I make a lot more little typos when that happens, so I apologize for that. This is residentially zoned, residentially planned. As I say, this is part of the high school. We all know where it is. The applicant, and I'd like to thank the applicant for a wonderfully complete application. I don't do these applications, and it's not the same person who fills them all out, so the quality is all over the board. But when you get a good one like this, where everything is addressed, it makes it so much simpler. Look how short this staff report is. It's just nice and clean. And I went through each of the applicable criteria, particularly from 17.61. I would like to make a note, and it's on page 3, under sub C. This is probably the only typo of any potential damage here. It says, proposed in 10A will be mounted to new 50-foot support tower and will extend no higher than 154 feet above the top of the support tower. What I meant was 15. Yeah, 15. I wanted to get you before Malachi caught me. But, so just kind of X out the 4 there, and that makes it a little more reasonable. There's a couple of other typos which I've highlighted and will change in the decision. And I went through the conditional use criteria themselves, and this is, is the site suitable? Is it compatible with the area? Is it timely, given the existence of infrastructure? Does it satisfy the comprehensive plan policies that apply? And I found in favor of all of those. And I was going to recommend an additional condition of approval, but I think I'm going to wait for the applicant to talk. We may not need to. And I hope Malachi notes on number 1.
I did.
Yeah, and I did that just since you were talking earlier this evening. I added that, but I think I am just going to start putting that in there, by the way, until somebody tells me not to. And as brief as that is, I think that's all I'm going to say. You all got this stuff, right? You got the site plan information, you got the narrative, all of the, addressing 1761 as well as the conditional use criteria. This is, as far as where to site a wireless facility, I'm not supposed to make judgments like this, but frankly, this is ideal. It's in the interior of a large property amongst a bunch of other vertical stuff, particularly that scoreboard. And it's replacing what's there now, which is much taller. So with that, I'm going to sit quietly unless there's questions and let the applicant do his stuff.
Any questions to Clay right now?
No.
To Clay? No.
Okay, now it's time for public. Ooh. No,
Good evening.
It's the applicant or his representative, and that's you.
Yes, hello, my name is Reed Stewart. I represent ACOM Consulting, who is the representative of Verizon Wireless in this case. As Clay mentioned, we are trying to replace an existing decommissioned wireless communications facility with a new facility that meets the current Gladstone City Code standards. I agree with Clay that there really isn't much of a better place that we could pick for this to work out. We're replacing an existing facility, going the same spot, going at a lesser height than is existing. We've also tried some other locations and have been essentially kind of pushed this direction by the city. I'm sure you're aware of the previous attempt to locate on the BGE pole. So I don't have any really other comments than that, other than that we have read the staff report and agree with it and don't have any conflicts with that.
So I've got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
The first one has to do with the ground level exposure report.
Okay.
I noticed that all of the line items were shown at 100 feet, but the tower is actually going to be at 65 at the tip, right? And I'm wondering how much does that impact that? Because it's not, so the report isn't showing at the height the antenna will actually be at.
Just double check that. I'm not an RF engineer here, so I'm going on kind of what you're looking at there based on the report. However, I will say that in any of these cases, Verizon does operate within the FCC guidelines, which is a very small percentage of what the maximum exposure would be.
Do you have any idea why this wasn't done at the tower height?
I am looking there. And
Malachi, are you looking at the acoustical report, or which one?
This is ground level exposure. It just says page 2 on it, but the one from Andrew H. Thatcher.
Yes, I'm pulling that up here. And
Oops, sorry.
65 is the basis. I'm looking at page 2. It says basis of calculation, equation 6 of OET bulletin 65.
I don't have it.
There it is. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, so the fourth column, antenna height, says 100 feet.
I am not sure, but if that is a concern, we could certainly have that rerun and provide that as a condition.
I would prefer that, just
Okay.
because, as you know, there was a lot of public outcry last time.
Certainly.
And it would be much better for us to have on the record something that shows what the antenna actually would be, in case anybody from the public wants to review the decision and what we decided.
I will make a note here, and we will follow up with the engineer, and we can get that passed on to Clay.
Okay. The other one I want to talk to you about, and this may seem silly, but it has to do with the color that you presented in your images.
Okay.
So on page 23, you mentioned dark green.
Yes.
But the images seem to be more like a light pea green color. What is the actual color going to be?
We haven't specifically picked out a color. We're going with a dark green because it matches some of the tree foliage there. That is something that we could, if there's a preferred color.
Well, my preference, I went by there and I looked, my preference would be for it to blend into the tree line.
Okay.
The images you provided is definitely shorter, but it didn't really blend. And I think the color and the images you provide are way too light for it to blend in with the natural trees we have there.
Okay.
So I would say color-wise, make it blend as closely as possible with the natural trees that are there, and that will make people happier.
I
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
not a
like the
problem.
idea of gray to match the sky.
That doesn't really meet our code, though.
If I might say,
If you look at the pole, it's there, the wooden one, the brown that it is,
It
it
blends
blends
in pretty
really
well,
well. I
yeah.
think it really, if it were similar to what was there, would probably
I have
be
to
the least
agree.
offensive.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to like a wood-colored pole with the green for the antenna stuff. I think that'd be okay too. But my main thing is I want it to
To
blend into
blend.
the trees.
Earth colors, obviously.
We're open to whatever color that the commission chooses. We don't have any specific.
Maybe we could all write our preference down on a piece of paper and draw it out.
Draw it out of a
I
hat.
would add that's, as you probably know, some colors fade,
Yeah.
some colors last.
A bowl.
Yeah, so, you just want to make sure it's not going to be something that we decide on a color that after a while starts looking, goes from the dark, beautiful green to the pea green to
Of
the
course.
to a look that
To
you're going
gray.
to end up having to repaint or deal with in the future. So
We're open to any condition of specific colors. Otherwise, we can make a note that will be painted a dark green or brown, whatever
Make it blend.
preference.
And I do want to reiterate, I'm really happy with the quality of this report.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Provided a lot of information, and it was really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for the applicant?
I got a couple.
Of course you do.
Of course I do, yeah. So, yeah. Back to this car wash. No, I wanted to respond. Samantha Nelson sent a letter through and sent to the city, and basically it was sent to you, Clay. Maybe you haven't seen it, but
I haven't seen it.
school district. Can I read it?
I believe that's actually part of the
Record, yeah.
applicant's
It's in
packet.
the packet
Well, yeah,
you
okay,
submitted.
It has to do with the. Well, right, yeah. But I was asking, Clay hasn't seen because it was addressed to Clay, so it was. The school district is requesting an adjustment to the screening standards of Chapter 17.61.070 for the proposed Verizon wireless communications facility. The addition of landscaping to this area would create both safety and logistic issues, including, and they go on to talk about they want to use that for storage of buses, they want to be able to turn around in there, and then at the latter part of the conversation, they're concerned about the trees being planted there, which were there to kind of hide it. You know, basically the equipment area, the fenced equipment area.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some, on your drawings, you've got some trees shown in there. They're asking that maybe that's not a good idea because it gives the teenagers and other people a place to hide in there. And they also specifically point out they're concerned about homeless moving into that area if it's shielded behind there.
Yeah, I do have that in
Oh,
the
I'm
file.
sorry.
It was just included within the application packet. I thought something else had been sent in
Oh,
separately.
no. I just wanted to make sure we addressed that. I mean,
Yeah, and in the staff report, it's on page 4, just at the very top, 17.61.110. There's built-in language that allows you to adjust certain site development standards. And frankly, the argument presented in the application is, as a former high school student, it makes complete sense to me to do that from a security standpoint and also for the other reasons discussed, but certainly if for no other reason, for the security
that was the reason I brought it
standpoint.
up, because I agree with you. I think that
Yeah.
And as having experience in this industry and visiting a lot of these sites, we do see that, and you'll see the blue tarps and all the garbage kind of collecting around the trees. So in this specific location, we would prefer to not have it.
and I'm in favor of not having it.
I am as well.
That was all of them. Randy, I didn't have more than one.
Well, that's not much, is it?
Well, I had some more, but it's more technical and we don't need to deal with it.
I do have a question regarding, you mentioned that sorry, I don't know what page it was on, that you are leaving room for one additional antenna, right?
Additional height for antenna, so another carrier, correct?
Another carrier. So if somebody wants to do that at some point
Mhm.
down the road, what is the process Do they go to you directly, or?
No, they would go to the carrier or the landlord, and they might put them in touch with the carrier. But the way this works is that typically the pole is owned by the carrier and leased. The ground space is from the underlying landlord.
To get permission from the school and from Verizon.
Depending on how the lease is written, but typically, yes. Certainly, you'd have to get permission from Verizon, who would then sublease space on the tower. Depending on how it goes for ground space, they might be able to go to the school and lease additional ground space based on their needs.
Questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now's the time for public testimony. Do we have anybody that would like to testify either in opposition or support of the application? Seeing none, now's the time for applicant rebuttal. We probably won't have that either. Any further comments from the applicant? No? Any further testimony? Let's make a motion to either close the public...
When you do the motion, can we put a condition on to
Well,
not...
we're just making a motion to close the hearing.
We're not quite to that point.
Oh, all right, sorry.
If there's no further testimony, I'll entertain a motion to either close the public hearing or continue to a date certain. What is the pleasure of the commission?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing for Z0271-17-C/PDR.
Thank you.
I second.
In favor?
I defer to Ms. Smith.
Sorry?
I defer my second to Ms. Smith,
Okay.
since we said it at the same
Let the record show. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes. All right, let's discuss.
So Dennis, you were saying? Condition?
I just want to make sure that the condition's done, that we don't have the landscaping that they propose, that we modify it so that they're not required to do that. In fact, we'd prefer they don't.
I would agree with that.
So I was thinking about condition
Same here.
6, by just saying that we've reviewed the application and decided that based on the code that, we can, whatever you want to say there, not have to do that landscaping.
Okay, I've actually got that as condition 8.
Okay.
But 6 was that page 2, column 4 of table 1, the 100-foot, the 100-foot height. You wanted that to be done, more realistic, 60 feet or.
Oh, sorry, can you say that again?
Well, the table 1, column 4, page 2 of the evaluation of compliance with FCC guidelines was done at a height of 100 feet, and you're looking to have it redone at the actual height of this pole. So that's where I had for 6. And then for 7, and I was a little reluctant to even put this in here because this has been tested and looked at, and it's really hard to pick a color for a cell tower.
Yeah.
The only thing I know is that blue is absolutely the wrong color to pick. But what I put...
Bright red, maybe?
I mean, it looked like you people came up generally with brown.
I think, I don't know if anybody disagrees, but we wanted to
I
blend...
disagree.
Okay, then...
You disagree. But in general, I think our code asked for, and I think we're saying we'd like it to blend in with the trees.
Is that what the code says?
Yeah.
That it has to blend in with the trees?
It has to blend in with the environment.
I think the environment is cloudy in Oregon.
The current color of the existing pole, unless you're looking for it, you don't even really see it.
Honestly, it's not, it's invisible right now.
There, so,
You see?
I've probably attended 50 football games at the high school in my life, and I've never seen that pole before.
I haven't either.
Never.
I mean, I've
Same.
seen it, but never clicked
Right.
that it was out of place.
Me neither. Yeah.
I think it should try to be the same color it currently is, because it doesn't stick out.
Are you talking about for the pole
What's
or
that?
things on the
Something
pole?
close to
or
what's,
Both.
match what's existing.
Interesting, because it is
Why don't we,
wider.
okay, why don't we just put
What?
similar to existing, because there's there's an infinite number of shades of brown.
Yeah.
And so just similar to existing, except for Chair Rowlett, who's,
Pushing for
Well, my favorite cell tower is in Los Angeles, and it's a palm tree.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like those the most, so
I
why
think
can't
they're
we do the palm tree
creepy.
here?
That wouldn't show up at
Quite
all.
frankly, they have a very excellent installation in Bend near Summit High School that you would think is a pine tree or a fir tree, but the truth is we've got something existing here with other towers around, and is there any way we can ask them, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but to submit a couple other different colors or looks for us without, just to, and,
Have staff approve it?
yeah, you make it
This, and
We can pass
I'm
it
not
up to
kidding,
Sandy
but I am colorblind. I mean, I can do browns, but that's one of the few, I'm colorblind, so
Is
no.
that why I kept hearing, no?
Well, plus, yeah, I don't think it should be up to staff, for one thing.
No.
Either let the applicant pick it or you pick it.
Why
And
not
if-
just a brown that matches what's out there?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm fine with that.
Let's just say similar to existing.
Yeah, that's the word I have, is
Say that
similar.
it'd be tough to match via photo attempt exactly the paint, so, I mean, we
Sure.
could put
Closest
brown,
match to existing pole.
Similar.
Transparent,
Similar.
whatever, you know.
Okay, I got pole to be similar in color to existing wood pole.
Where we started.
And then I got, I'm sorry, number 8, adjustment to landscaping approved as requested. I don't know how to do that as a condition, it's just more of a statement.
the findings are in there.
So that would be on number 4.
Is that a separate number, though?
Say that
Do you-
that condition, that
Do we have to add one?
It's really not, I don't think, necessary to add, I mean, you're not asking them to do something. The findings
it's a
clarify
finding.
that
Yeah.
it's unwarranted to basically impose the entire, I don't think a condition is
I
necessary.
just think we need to
Right.
mention it somewhere, and I'm good with however
It is
you
in the
wanna do
findings,
that.
though.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I remember reading that.
So Clay, when you write your report on that, just mention the planning commission, blah, blah, blah. Can you do that?
Right, planning commission
Grants the
discussed and
adjustment.
concurs.
Blah, blah,
and-
literally blah, blah, blah would be ideal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with exclamation
Blah,
points.
blah, blah.
So I guess you're probably hearing, we're in agreement that we're not gonna want the trees. Was there any other conditions?
I didn't have
Believe
any.
so.
There was 9. What was number 9?
No, I had up 2-8, but we just removed number 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
Already done a finding.
All right, so, anything else? So, what is the pleasure of the commission? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve Z0271-17-C/PDR, the replacement of the 50-foot tower as proposed with the condition as cited.
I'll second that.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner McCarty,
Yes?
Commissioner Natalie Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Malachi,
Yes.
Commissioner Poole,
Yes.
Commissioner Wentz,
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith,
Yes.
Chair Rowlett.
Yes. Approved.
A quick
Thank you.
question, do you know how soon you'll get started?
I don't know, have a specific date. I know that this is on their build plan, I believe, for 2018. Obviously, we
Yeah.
have to go through building permits, and it would have to be coordinated with construction-wise with the school, so that...
Yeah, as long as you're not there in football season or something, right in the middle.
I'd have to talk to my counterpart who are
It'll be a while. Thank you.
Thanks for the great application, again. All right.
Way to go.
Business from the Planning Commission?
Dennis, do you have
I have some, just briefly. I'm the liaison to the Parks Board, and as most of you know, maybe all of you know, we're working on the master plan and looking for input on it still. Jim Wynot has been really helpful. Obviously, it's a list of possibilities to prioritize. We've got, limited funding when it comes down to the bottom line, and I just want to let everyone know that the Parks Board has been working real hard. We're having, everyone's there. We're not operating, missing a couple of folks, and so there's a lot of enthusiasm about it, and a lot of concerns about how we're going to make the money, what we can do with the money, and how we can improve security and keep the parks clean. Because let's face it, people love that the tourism's growing. More and more people are coming down to Meldrum, and we've had vandalism. We've had, just a variety of litter and problems that come with it. So I just want to make sure everybody weighs in, and again, I want to thank everybody that's putting effort into that.
So Jim did send me a URL, but it doesn't actually work for me, and I did send some error reports back to the site. But yeah, I can't actually access the site to get any of that information or to get feedback.
I'll give them a buzz tomorrow. I got to talk to them anyway. Huh. You're being blocked.
Well, it's actually because it doesn't seem to be working correctly with
Right.
IPv6.
Okay. I will give him
With
a call.
IP6?
So, Clay, can we discuss for a minute where we are on the before expiration thing now that Eric's gone? So what is the status? What do we need to do?
I mean, it's a text amendment, and it would be a waste of everyone's time and energy to do that individual text amendment, go through the, through public hearings. It's just it's a pain. So it should be tacked on to something else. It's like a congressional bill. You just stick the little stuff on something, bigger. I mean, what do you think, David?
Oh yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think you can
simple.
continue to do what you're doing, which is totally fine. And then, I understand, I think based on the mayor's comments, recent comments, that they're going to be looking to reestablish the grant to re-energize the code audit and amendments.
So we should just hold on to that until we do.
I would.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing, it's not as easy as anytime you touch your development code, you've got to give notice to the state. You get 35 days notice there. You got to put a post-adoption notice to the state. It's a decent amount to give notice to Metro. A lot of noticing, and for one simple
tiny thing,
yeah.
But, one of the things that's been frustrating me for a long time has been, and I've heard all the arguments for and against, and it makes sense, but where do you draw the line? We end up with the code just keeps slipping back and back and back, and things are being left out. And if we're waiting for a grant before we do anything, one of my pet peeves is I wrote up a modification to the GMC to deal with the marijuana issue. We've got properties that open up, and we have nothing that addresses it in the code. And when I went to Eric originally, and then I went to the mayor, or to Steve Johnson, and then the mayor, everybody says, well, we got this grant coming up. Well, the problem is, if we don't put that kind of thing in place before they occupy, then we have to deal with it. We're behind. It's a cart and horse thing again, except we'll be behind the horse, and he'll be behind the cart.
Yeah, it's I think
it
it's
is behind the horse, right?
It's ultimately going to be a call for the city council as to when they want to run that, because there's costs involved and all that.
Well, yeah.
But
it seems like nothing's getting done, and it just keeps getting stopped.
Yeah, well, there was I think the city did have a grant at one point, but was offered one, and for whatever reason that fell through. So hopefully they get the opportunity to get another one. I know I wouldn't say they're readily available, but you guys would be a great candidate for it because it has been so long.
Yeah, and to kind of clarify, the telecommunication one was the last one we did, and when we did that, we took up David's time for 3 months?
I wouldn't say it was all I was doing, but yeah, no. I mean, in all seriousness,
just that one little section.
It's a long that was a very unique beast.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of finances, we do have direction from City Council that we can start doing that, but we just we have to realize that it's not cheap.
Well, I do realize that, and it's not. The problem is, it is more expensive to not have things in place, to not have those processes and those rules in place.
Right.
Ultimately, you look down the road, it costs us a lot more money not to have them in place. We were handcuffed here recently on the last process with the 52 apartments. You can't do this. Well, yeah, it's because the code's not up to date.
And
we can't be a planning commission and have our hands tied.
And that's a good point. If we're not gonna update the entire code at once, one thing we could do is we could look at areas like that that have been restraining us repeatedly recently.
Exactly.
And try to figure out what we need to do to get that
Would help
area fixed to better serve what we need.
Yep.
I
No, that's
agree.
fair.
Natalie, you have anything?
No, I do not.
No, sir.
No. I just wanna, at the last city council meeting, which I watched online, I love that, watch on my own time. They have a process for picking the next commissioner or counselor, and I think we need to have that here for when a position becomes vacant. And I really like the idea of having 2 people from this, 2 people from that, 2 people from that. So I want to suggest to the mayor that when they pick a new commissioner at some point in time for the planning commission, that we have 2 planning commission members on that, 2 city council members, and then 2 city staff members, and then the applicant can be interviewed or whatever, and they can choose from there. How's that sound?
So you want to follow the same process?
Yeah, just the same thing they have, but I want to make sure that we have 2 planning commission members, and I think, anybody that's interested, put your name in the hat like they did, and David can draw it out like he did.
My second time drawing lots. I'm getting good.
And then we can, have some input on that.
For what it's worth, I've already proposed that to the mayor in writing
You did?
several months ago.
Good job.
I also brought it up at a council meeting before we even got to this stage.
I didn't watch that one. I watched the last one.
Yeah, that was one of my, I got lots of them.
I'm afraid we might have an empty seat or 2.
Well, I know,
After the next
I'm
city council
pretty
meeting.
confident we're gonna have one.
I'm talking about
Who
here.
else has applied to be on the city council?
These 2 guys.
Oh, you both have?
Yep.
Okay.
We could have 2 empty
Or none.
Or none,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty confident we'll have probably one for sure, and
Thanks a lot.
more than likely. I was thinking more of Malachi.
In any event, we could have some open
They
position-
deserve
open
you on the
spots.
city council, Dan.
Just want to get rid of me.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.